start a new body of work, I get this kind of fear and I'm just not sure about the path and where I'm heading, and I start having these doubts about whether I know what I'm doing. So I'm sure some of you probably relate to that. But today I've decided that I'm just going to get stuck in. I'm going to start filming and finding my way, and I'd love to bring you along the journey with me. So in some ways, you're going to get a bit of an insight as to how I get unstuck, how I show up even when I'm not sure. Because I have a few things that I do that help me to get in the flow. And often I find once I get going, then things start to happen and I'm on my way. So with that said, first things first, I'm going to grab a cup of tea. I'm not going to lie, I chose this cup specifically because it's the colour palette that I am dreaming about at the moment, the blues and the greens, and even just that flow of colours. There's so much that's around you that can be inspiration for your paintings, and I just grab onto whatever I can in order to help me in the studio. So I'm thinking about landscapes. I'm looking at whether there is anything that I've already done that could be a bit of a helper to me. And in my last body of work, there were 2 little landscapes, and I shared them in a recent vlog, and many of you commented that you'd love to learn how to create something similar. Now I have to admit, these paintings, they kind of just happened. They were very loose and spontaneous, and I think therein is the first clue. Spontaneity, freedom. How can I sort of have a sort of loose landscape, nothing too defined? So that's the first thing I'm paying attention to. The other thing is the colours. There was a sense of place coming from the colour palette. These particular landscapes almost felt like a river scene. There was a feeling of water and reeds and greenery, and I feel like focusing in on the colour palette, approaching colour with that idea of place in mind is going to help me come up with some ideas for these landscapes. Now this isn't a particularly new concept to me. I love creating colour palettes, but what I want to do is create colour palettes and think about the landscape as I'm creating them. So it might be channeling the idea of a desert or the outback, and then maybe moving into like forests and then down to the coast, really feeling that what you feel when you're in those places and bringing that into my color choices. So I've already started that process, and I'm going to do a little bit more of that today with you. But just so you know, like where I'm going with this, here are some of my swatchy sheets that I've been doing recently. I think you may have seen these. I often share them on Instagram. I'm looking here at sort of a more outback desert sort of palette. This one here to me feels quite foresty, and the most recent one that I did is this palette here, and this has got an ocean and the beginnings of summer coming through. Where I am in Adelaide, we are coming to the end of our winter, and my art is very affected by the seasons, so I'm craving like blues and freedom and the beach basically. But I know that many of you are in the complete opposite to me. Yeah, you probably have got that feel of autumn and the sort of the rusty colours and coziness that I have been in for the past few months. So I apologise if you're on the other side of the world and your vibe is very different to mine, but the seasons just have their say. So in a recent episode, or in a recent vlog, I shared an unboxing of some of my latest supplies, and that included some new fluid paints, this Australian olive green, and even the name of it almost suggests landscape. So I love these paints. They're fantastic, and they're loose and flowy, so they're going to support that idea of being spontaneous and painting with freedom. So I'm going to use a combination of fluid paints with some heavier bodied paints as well. So I might use a little bit of this. I've also got some gesso here, so I might use a bit of gesso if I need white. And I've got some pastels too. These are the Neo Color 2 water-soluble wax pastels. So I've got some of these, and look at the colors. I'm already thinking about that landscape, that blue ocean coastal vibe. One of the things that I've been enjoying lately is using like the edges of the canvas and working right over the edges. So I'm just going to loosely sketch. I'm not even thinking about anything here. I'm just getting something down, the beginnings of something, and I'm extending right onto the edges just for the fun of it. So I'm just using some water, and I'm just going to get a little bit of wetness onto the canvas. And I might even just use a bit of this in the water. I don't know, I'm just feeling my way. So let's get some colours down. This Payne's Grey from the Matisse brand is actually quite thick compared to the other colours. They have different consistency, so some of them are like high flow acrylics, they're really loose and watery, and some are thicker, and the Payne's Grey has actually got a thicker feel to it. Even just having like the drips on the edge is super cool. I'm enjoying painting my edges at the moment. And one of the things that I love about it is I hate painting edges afterwards. Probably my favorite way to start a painting is just to bring in light and dark colors in that first layer. So I'm bringing a bit of that blue up towards the pink area. I know that's going to mix where those two colours are touching. There's a little bit of bleeding going on. I'm just going to fill this in now and just get that first layer down. Is now that this layer is wet, it's going to need a bit of time to dry. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to continue on with this painting. So what I'm going to do is actually get out into the landscape and let that inspire me as well. So the process has started inspiring me, and now I'm going to gather some inspiration. I happen to live by the coast, and I would love if you came along with me while I go for a walk, check out some of my local coastline, and see if I can get some ideas that I can bring back to this painting. So we're going to get some inspiration at Hallicove Beach. So this is the beach near where I live, and it's a very pebbly beach. Super rugged coastline. It's quite different to most of the beaches around South Australia. Ooh, beautiful. So even though most of my paintings are imagined landscapes and I don't use realistic colours, I still love to get out and absorb inspiration from around me. And what I'm particularly loving at the moment is all the greenery that's coming through and how it contrasts with the kind of sandy, neutral tones of the beach behind me. So what I wanted to do is just bring you down, come and have a look, because this beach is quite an interesting one. So I'm already noticing these beautiful wildflowers and the pops of yellow and orange. You know, I don't hardly ever use yellow and orange in my paintings, but there's something there that's intriguing me, and I'm thinking about whether or not there could be an opportunity to explore a different color palette with little bursts of yellow or orange in it. Of course, the pebbles always provide inspiration. You can get up close to them and look at the beautiful line work and the patterns that you can see. So this is a really good spot to start thinking about landscape compositions. So one of the things that I'm noticing here is that there's some rocks that are in the foreground, and then you've got the headland in the background, and it creates a very interesting sort of visual feel. So what I'm going to do is take a photograph of that so that I can keep that in mind when I'm doing my very loose abstract landscapes. I can still have that connection to an actual scene that I've experienced and been able to see in real life. My hubby always says that the best camera is the one that you have in your hand. So I've got my iPhone here, and what I'm going to do is just take a quick snap of that. So when you're in a place like this, often there's just so much inspiration that your senses are kind of getting almost overloaded with ideas. And what I would suggest is you've got to hone in on some things, and that's where it's useful to use your camera to take photographs, look for simple compositions and shapes so that you can then bring those back to your studio and really look for the simple forms and the simple lines, because they are really helpful for your paintings. Okay, so I'm very lucky because this beach actually backs onto a national park. So I'm going to take you there now because that's got a very different feel and also different colors. And you're going to see some of the red sand and some of those beautiful sort of rock formations. So I'm going to head over there now and see what I can gather as inspiration from there. If I seem out of breath, that's because there's a lot of stairs to get here, but it's well worth it. And I'm going to show you around a little bit. So I want you to see all the different colors that you can pick up from the rock formations. And in particular, I'm loving these soft sort of like pinky colors with the creams, the more sort of rusty reds. And look at all the beautiful layers of sediment. You can see all of the history in the rock face. So I'm not a geologist, so I'm not going to go into the history of this place. I'm just here to enjoy the colors, the compositions that are here, the contrast between, I particularly love, like, again, that greenery contrasting against that dry, dusty land. It is so beautiful, and you can see all the layers of sediment. Super inspiring, and I'm just trying to think how I could translate some of that into my paintings. Well, I'm back from the beach and my hair is probably a little bit windswept because it was windy down there today, but I definitely got what I was looking for. For now, I'm going to wrap it up for today. I hope that you've enjoyed this little sneak peek into what I'm up to. I just want to say thank you for being here and joining me in my studio, and also coming along and seeing where I live and how I gather inspiration for my work.